Why We Bleep is sponsored by Signal Sounds. Earlier this month, an outbreak of mass granulation occurred in the Glasgow area, with Storm Abha firmware 2.0 bringing twice the usual quantity of granulation per capita at no extra charge. Once the clouds had parted, the area was left sounding like it had been dipped in angel's tears, and the locals were quoted as feeling absolutely buzzing. The grains lifted, a quantity of bullfrogs was found encouraging young people to take up synthesis, until an octa-expander blew in from the south and added full-wave rectified unipolar positive LFOs and a host more good things to oct modules, which are generally found everywhere. People promptly went mad with the possibilities, shrieking 24 modulation sources in 8 HP as they ran into the Folkdale Resident Gardens and were never seen again. So if you'd like to taste the rainbow of synthesis that is this golden age of mad-ass things you can actually buy and make music with, visit signalsounds.com. That's signalsounds.com. Why We Bleep is also sponsored by thonk.co.uk. Hey, you. Who, me? Yes, you. Are you looking to get a massive 10% off of DIY kits from thonk.co.uk? Are you mad? I'd be mad not to want that. You would be mad not to want that like a March hare in November. Winter's coming, boy. You could be warming your cockles around your soldering iron, building a Befaco Effects boy or a RYK Knight Rider or a Sebsong sampler with that 10% left in your pocket. Take that, heating bills. All right, man. Quit heating bills cockles and tell me how I get this deal. All right, you. This coupon gives any customer, new and old, a 10% discount on any full DIY kit from Thonk. It expires at the end of November 2023 and can't be combined with other coupons or applied to other products on sale. The code is Computer World 2. That's Computer World and the number 2. Stick that code into thonk.co.uk before the end of November and get 10% off any full DIY kit. You'd be mad not to. Why? Hey, you. Yes, welcome to Why We Bleep. This is a place where we talk to people who make electronic music, or the gear that they use, and sometimes both. Although today we're talking to someone who uses the gear very, very competently. That would be none other than Chris Clark. Now, Clark is a Warp Records luminary. He has been on Warp since, I think, 2000, and is, I think you could say, kind of one of their stars, like, definitely. Clark is amazing and writes this kind of just ultra cohesive, firm, sort of engaging, energizing, storming, banging electronic music, and with very humble roots and gear. Like, if you've read interviews with Clark, he's done loads of really good interviews, very open about his techniques and what he does. He's one of these people who makes music that sounds like it's from a singular world. Like, you know it's a Clark track. You know the sort of the worlds and the textures that go with it. He's built this whole sound. He knows exactly what he's doing, if that makes sense. Of course he does. But, like, he has got a very distinct vision. I've been listening to it for many, many years. So getting to talk to someone and actually just be like, all right then, so what was this about? You know, and what's going through your head? This is just the coolest thing. So I'm really pleased that this was possible. And I'm also especially grateful to Clark Chris himself for being so incredibly open and groovy. That is to say that as a person to interview, he doesn't hold back. He's very earnest and he's very, willing to engage with a conversation like this, which is commendable because it's not a given. Not everyone wants to share every aspect of this sort of thing and do so openly and frankly, as he does. Now, this conversation was recorded with Chris quite some time ago. So I have had to go full time in order to make it even possible for me to produce this podcast. And by the way, if you enjoy the podcast, please do consider sponsoring on Patreon. I am shamelessly going to ask that because it is helping make the podcast possible and me feed my family. So it's patreon.com/Mylar Melodies. And long story short, this conversation being on ice and not being out there was one of the contributing factors to me going, screw this. I really need to just start doing this as my job. And so I had this conversation like nearly a year ago, and my sincere apologies to you, Chris, if you are listening to this, and anyone else who, psychically was waiting for this, because it's a long time. Unfortunately, that gulf of time means that I didn't get to ask him about his Tom York executive produced album Sus Dog, that you might be wondering, hey, am I going to learn about good old Tom York and what it's like to collaborate with him? Well, alas, you are not, because although that I'm sure was happening, it wasn't the subject of our discussion. And in fact, this was a conversation held around Body Riddle's reissue. That is, the amazing album Body Riddle that he made was reissued last year. And so that's kind of what we were talking about. But to be fair, we don't speak specifically about like the Body Riddle era or anything. I'm not going to miss an opportunity to just talk generally with someone about their process, what's going through their head, and try and understand kind of what makes them in some small way. So I'm going to leave you now in the capable hands of Mr. Clark, and I will see you later for a bit more chat. Thanks. Were you musical from like an early age, or?
I was. Weirdly, my family aren't, but my granddad was. My parents weren't really interested in music, but I was. I don't know if that's unusual. It's probably quite common for kids to be into stuff that their parents aren't into, though. But for me, it felt more than that. And it kind of just got more intense the older I got. But as a kid, I played violin a bit and played in orchestras, only the school orchestra, but was more interested in drums. Yeah, it's funny. I think your early years are kind of, they shape you in some way. And it always felt quite like I was swimming against the current, in that it wasn't particularly encouraged by school or parents, really.
Do you mean the drums, or like, surely stringed instruments are always kind of virtuous?
Well, I didn't have a drum kit. There was this orchestra once a week, and I played for about an hour every week. And then in the week, would just practice on cushions. Don't know if you remember that band, Living Colour. Do you remember them?
No.
I used to love them. And we'd play along to their stuff on cushions. It's good fun.
As in drumming on cushions?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if it's all you can get.
Yeah, exactly. And then a Yamaha drum machine when I was about 11, I think. But it wasn't a very good one.
But still.
It's still quite fun.
Do you remember what it was?
No, but it had
what it was like.
8 plastic pads on it that just felt horrible. Like you couldn't play it with sticks. And it had a little sequencer. I can't remember. But it was a properly dodgy bit of gear, but quite entertaining to use, yeah.
Did you enjoy music lessons, as in, the orchestral stuff that you were playing? Was that a pleasure?
No, I didn't. No, I really enjoyed like folk melodies on my violin, and I would make my own and enjoy deconstructing. There was like one sort of folkish tune. I think it was just the wrong classical music that didn't really appeal to me. I can't even remember. It's like turgid, like Brahms, and I know that's probably can be amazing, but not as a kid. It just did not appeal to me. I was into Prince and Public Enemy, and then like The Prodigy, and it just didn't appeal. But then I've always loved Bach and like some classical music, but just not the stuff that we played in the orchestra. And I couldn't connect to it really.
Someone once told me that Bach is like sort of Cubase, in the sense the music is almost arranged in blocks and kind of, I don't know if that's true,
Right.
but that person had a better understanding of it than I did, that's for sure.
I like that. Yeah, he'd probably be into Cubase,
Yeah,
I reckon.
probably.
Yeah, no, it's kind of weird. It's like with classical music, it's that I feel like I'm with the composers, but I'm not with the institution, if that makes sense. This might be completely wrong, but I just have this idea that the institution of classical music is so certain of itself and how the music should be interpreted. But it's quite a nice, slightly cheeky idea to consider that, well, maybe the composer just thinks you're all really pompous and they just want to hear it in a pub, and they don't want to hear that high fidelity recording. They'd be baffled by it. Like, why should it sound like that on record? It can feel quite forbidding, and I just don't think you can blame the composers for that. I think it's the way it's framed in culture. And it needs to be in culture as well. It shouldn't be. I don't think it's like, I'm not saying like ban it or that, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm just ambivalent about its role.
But it's, I guess, for soundtracks that like is how the majority of people are still engaging with classical music, which is interesting. Obviously, you do that too, but it's like that's the masses do still listen to classical music through films, at least.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much amazing classical music, but it's sort of, yeah, it's weird. It's like also modern classical harmony, like neoclassical, isn't really. It's not really classical. It's more like my last album was on DG, which probably isn't doing much for saying that it's not on a classical label, because it is, but I didn't hear it as classical. To me, it was like a really dark folk record with like 2 tracks that had live strings on them that were maybe sort of influenced by probably more Bernard Herrmann, but some other French composers who I love. I was just kind of channeling that. It's probably the most antithetical thing to like punkish electronic music that you could make, but on some level, but there's definite gold there as well. Like, if you study it off the beaten track, I suppose. I found myself really enjoying studying classical harmony.
When you were a kid or now, do you mean?
So kind of nowish, yeah, like the last sort of 10 years probably.
It seems like you're teaching yourself a lot of things in that way. I mean, I did read another interview. You're like, I've been teaching myself. Oh, so you were teaching yourself to like notate, to notate music.
Yeah, just enough to kind of get what I want from it. Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I always feel like it's not sort of a means in itself. It's just that I enjoy the process, and I wouldn't ever say that if you don't do that, you're not making real music. That's nonsense. I just think that's purely nonsense, but it's really been helpful for me for film scores, just to be able to unpick harmony. And I just really enjoy it. I really enjoy time away from tools. To be honest, I quite often, I've got this perverse fantasy that it would actually be a relief to stop using synths and computers. And I don't always think that. I'm quite sort of skits on it, but I would be fine if I just had a piano and maybe just wrote songs and did it. I would survive as a musician, I think, and it would kind of be a relief. There's something about sort of visualizing music away from the tools that I find really enjoyable, and it kind of, you feel like synaptic growth a bit more when you force yourself to just like run through a sequence of chords in your head and then try and put them in a different key, and like the old school way, like when you crack that and realize that that is a way to practice music, it's so liberating, because you don't need crutches. And that, I think that's possibly, maybe that's the romance around traditional composition, but there's also a lot of silliness around it, because you don't want to run with that so far that you're like, it's just silly, because computers are also amazing, and it's not easy to write computer music. It's all difficult, basically. That's the truth of it. I think to do anything well, it's really hard.
Well, I listen to your music and I'm struck by yours is definitely like one of those musics where how to put this, like the sound design is innately tied with the composition. Like,
Right.
You are designing sounds and you're making music around those sounds, and you're following your nose and layering and what's next. And that is very opposite to the thing of just sitting with a piece of paper and a piano, which is sort of,
it is,
maybe
yeah,
see
no,
that's why
clearly
you would be craving it. But you can do both, I suppose, is the point. You seem to do both quite well.
You can, but you'd be right in saying that it's sort of perverse that I'm saying that they're the same. They're different. I suppose it's like graphic design and oil painting, or film editing and theatre. I feel like that's maybe quite a valid, like it's,
Yeah.
theatre people are like, oh, it's the script, it's everything, and it has to be live on stage. But it is kind of fun to make a film really paying a lot of attention to the script, but knowing it's going to be a film. Those elements are really worked on, and they work without it being a film. But yeah, sound design is I keep on saying it's hard. I'm not sure if hard's the right word. It's more just time. It's like, if you take the attitude that it's not actually hard, it's just time that you need, then that makes it a bit more kind of friendly to engage with. I don't not enjoy doing it. I'm absorbed in it, but some things just take a while to, progress on, which is probably how it should be.
It sounds like, there are tunes of yours that I'm listening to. I'm like, this, it reminds me of that DJ Shadow tune where it's like, just the right thing. It must to some degree be like hunting for samples, except when you're creating these things yourself. You've got to find the next sound, but it's like, I don't know how it works for you.
I loved that first album of his, the one that everyone loves.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Some tracks take ages.
And how do you do it?
Well, every track's different, just constant iterations. But then that thing of like making something that you actually did get right the first time, but because you're some sort of like insane perfectionist masochist, you then spend a year making 30 different versions and then end up choosing the first one. It's just such a cliche. I feel like it's a rite of producer passage to do that.
Weirdly, the last interview that I did is exactly the same, said exactly the same thing.
It's good. I quite like it. And I enjoy making all those versions. Like I did it on a track for this recent thing I've finished, and it was just a soft synth, but I spent about 4 months like re-recording it like note by note on every different synth I had through different EQs and different compressors, and had about like 90 stems of this 32 bar melody, and then just ended up going, actually no, I think the soft synth version's just better. It's just got something that I like. It's sort of almost a bit crushing, but it is also really funny. I find it quite funny.
That is very funny. I feel for you. You must have learned stuff on the way. It's not waste, surely.
And it's what's funny is that you do it, and like I knew it was. I kind of knew all along, but it's like compulsive behavior just spirals, and you're like recording all of this stuff, and against all the odds, you're still just preferring the first one. But for some reason, I just feel like I need to do that to sort of judge myself harshly or something. It's ridiculous.
So do you sort of treat it like you're a explorer of some kind? Like you've got like a line and you're like, well, I'll just try everything.
Well, it was, yeah, but this was like, it was weird because it was like, it was a sawtooth sound with a bit of cutoff. Like it wasn't doing anything excessively showy. There was some modulation on it in like a massive chain of plugins that was just doing something really nice. And then I tried to recreate that on like old 70s synths that I love that have just come up trumps like nearly every time, but it just wasn't having it. I don't know. Yeah. It's weird. It's just very strange.
I admire the dedication. Yeah, I don't know if I have the patience. The problem is I don't have the time.
Have you had that similar experience with anything that you've made?
Well, no, I don't. No, I haven't. Like I'm not, I'm lazy in that sense. Like I am lazy. I won't spend that time, and I don't make 90 tracks, I make 5-track tracks. But it isn't to say that it's better for it.
No, but I definitely have done it your way as well, and I think it is like really good to just not care. It doesn't mean it actually makes it better that you've put the effort in. And I don't do that for every track. It was notable for this album track that it was the one that was like people were commenting on, like, you've got it, just stop working on it.
But it is like, I suppose that for you, it's so much of it is the sound as well as the thing, and as in when I've been in the melody, it's like. And therefore, it feels right that you would hunt for it.
I'm trying to think of a track I did that I didn't spend that long on. Like if there's like Frau Wav, or that on the album, the Brief Fling version, that was like really quick, and I didn't do it. That was just no fuss at all. So it does happen. And then there's loads of tracks that I finish in about 3 days. But yeah, like I say, it's just different every time. But there have been a few that have just taken a while.
My brother said this thing once that always stuck with me, where he was like, you're talking about certain music. He's like, I can hear the progress indicator, where you just know that you can hear that it's been done on a grid, and that things are going to come in regimentedly on 4s and 8s
Right.
and stuff. And I don't get that sense with your music. Like, I think that's why, like, you know, it feels like you've woven it intentionally
Oh,
to sort of, I don't know.
that's
I'm not
nice.
just trying to be nice. I'm
Thank
just
you.
like,
No.
it's actually how it comes across. It's and which it would be interesting to pick your brains about, like the getting that sense of the flow of a track. I mean, there's tunes on there where they really take their time just to sort of dissipate, and like it's like the track itself is just sort of having a sit down and thinking, you know. But I don't
That's,
quite know how
yeah.
you make that on a computer.
I probably don't know how I made it either. I mean, like, quite often I'll just capture stuff to stereo and intentionally not, well, like I'll keep stems for everything, but I'll put that at the back of my mind and just work with stuff I've grouped, just because it feels more like recording to tape, that something's at stake and that it's earned. I don't like this thing in music where you just feel like it's just been gone over again and again and again and had all of everything spontaneous smoothed out of it. It's so weird. And well, it's not, the thing that's weird about it is that it's not weird. It's so of our time, and we've got our ears have got used to that. Like, I can see things from the perspective of someone from the 19th century, and I can imagine what stuff's going to sound like in 50 years. And they don't always shine a great light on where we're at. Like, this thing of just stuff just being gone over so much, so that it's this, like, this sort of manicured static, like when music sounds static, I can't. And then, like, I'm not dissing anyone specific. It's also in my, like, I've made tracks like that in the past and gone through a process of feeling like that's just not it. You know, you have to make mistakes in what you're doing. And so I've realized over like 20 years, when music has that static quality, I just turn off. I want to hear things be on the verge of falling apart. And I also think, like, thinking back to how a composer would think of it, well, it's just one instance of an idea. Like, the capture of something that you say is your album should have this kind of elastic, versatile quality where it can be an iteration in a different palette. It can have that slippery quality where, like, the album versions I released, they are, to my ears, the definitive versions, but they're also not. They're also, this music could happen in multiple ways on multiple different instruments. And it's just an idea, and it's sort of the primacy of the idea is the thing. But that's not like a cop out and saying it doesn't need to be well produced, but it's just a balance of sort of capturing something that's unrepeatable. And we don't live in a time where things are given that, you know, it's like everything can just be infinite. Undo is just not always healthy for art, I don't think.
Are you doing sort of long takes of things? And I don't know how you're sort of getting that sense of spontaneity into things.
Yeah, loads of long takes. Well, like, I'll just record for an hour, just like through a very specific chain of gear, and then that might just feature in a few tracks and define the sound of an album. But then I'll sort of make sample patches. But I'm really impatient. I'm so impatient with electronic music, way more than I am with learning piano and sort of learning instruments. I'm a bit flippant.
How do you mean?
Well, like, I'm quite sort of rigorous with practicing, probably actually because I'm not as, like, I've only been doing that for about 15 years, whereas I've been making electronic music for about like 25 years. Like, I know what I want from it. I'm really clear about it. Whereas with, you know, like, well, I started learning the cello 2 years ago, and I was quite diligent about that. But yeah, it's probably just a confidence thing. The adventurous side of electronic music is what turns me on. And as soon as I start being too, I don't like thinking about it. I just like doing it. I don't really like thinking about.
If you thought about it, you might just do the same thing you did last time.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
don't know if that's necessarily the case. It depends how. I mean, it seems that you do approach things with a kind of experimental sort of attitude. You are literally putting together a chain of stuff and like,
maybe.
I'll smash this through it and see what happens.
There was like a period of when I was really diligent and would sort of do experiments in quite a controlled way, like around Empty the Bones of You, and that felt like there's a parallel in that. Like, when you learn loads of polychords on the piano, you have to, like, I do it in quite a categorical, disciplined way, and I'll do a bit each day, and I'll be really conscious of what kind of harmony I'm learning. And I'll do that for about a year. But then when I improvise on the piano, I'm not thinking about that at all. It's like you have to do the kind of grunt work for it to become a muscle memory. So that's a parallel between like learning a traditional instrument and a computer. It's kind of the same thing. Essentially, you're just making it become as subconscious as possible.
Do you play a lot when you record as well?
Yeah, I mean, I do, yeah. Play every day, but I don't practice every day, but I always play, yeah. Try and record as much as I can.
To no great purpose, or for like a specific, do you know what I mean? Do you put out like the kind of lightning rod, as it were? You're like,
I just like recording stuff and then like having to listen to it and work out how I feel about it. I kind of enjoy the slight torturousness of that process. And also I just know from in the past that it's always good. You're always in a better position to have recorded something than to have not. And I just don't have that writer's block. I can just do it. Like I was recording piano this week and I was playing for I just recorded some of the most like awful stuff ever and was singing as well. And it was awful, but I just forced myself to do it and listened back to it. And I just found it really funny for one, and also really enlightening because it was just showing me exactly what I was doing wrong. And then 3 days later, it was like really good. And it just feels like you've got to push through that and get it out of the way. And maybe some artists maybe struggle with that, especially when you start off and you've written your first track and you've got no reference. You've just got maybe one track you've written. And if you hate it, it's like your world falls apart. But after a while, when you've got like 300 tracks, if one's not, you have that horrible thing when you start where you make something and you're in a really good mood and you listen back a day later and you think like, what was I thinking? This is awful.
yeah.
But you just get wise to that after a while. And I've had this other thing where I can be in a slightly bleak mood, but the music is just happening without any my ego getting involved at all. And I'm actually in a like not a great mood, but then listen later and it's actually quite good. And it's weird. You just like learn to not. You'd almost like don't need to believe in your own story about what it is. It just gets in the way of everything.
Yeah, believe in the process and just it will happen.
Yeah, exactly.
If it
Yeah,
wants to happen.
yeah. You just need to do it, and it sort of sorts itself out, and that's the magic of it for me, I think.
What sort of like your studio setup, kind of over the years, and as regards like what you put around yourself and how you set it up is always interesting to me. I mean, I love talking about studios, but like when you first started out, were you basically still making music the way that you first did it, for better or worse, or is it fundamentally different now?
It sort of feels like it, yeah.
What was your first, like the sort of Clarence Park era?
The first setup was I feel like the spirit's the same, but the tools are different. Clarence Park was just an Amiga and a CS1X and a Behringer mixer. Sorry, an Atari, and then a ESI 32 sampler.
Yeah,
which you had to buy. You bought like these zip disks. They could store something like 5 minutes of music, and it felt revelatory. Like, oh yeah, and so yeah, I would sample, like I would make 10-minute tracks by halving the sample time on that.
amazing.
But because I had to mix everything, I couldn't really save stuff, couldn't really go back to sessions. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, getting back to that point where
Constructiveness.
yeah, exactly. You haven't got limitless undo and sort of keeping that alive. So in that way, it feels similar.
Is that the ESI 32 with the red like strip on it? I sort of can see when you said it.
It's got a.
Like
I don't think so.
Yeah, but
it's got mad filters on
I think some of obviously like I know the Emu. I'm thinking of Emu as well. Like I don't know if
Emu, yeah,
was but there was like the Emu. Yeah, of course it is Emu. It is Emu. ESI 32. Yeah, and they're like wasn't it Dave Rossum and stuff? That guy behind Emu like is known for his like filter designs. He's like a genius.
Yeah.
So you just had like a sampler, a synth, and like I heard you had an effects like Zoom 1201.
Yeah, I bought that again recently because I got rid of it at the time. Probably needed the cash, but I got one recently. Yeah, it's good. Really grotty reverbs.
I really like. I've got so like I've bought these like old lexicons, like the 90s lexicons that are like were 300 quid and now like
it's funny how that happened.
I love the grain.
Yeah, lumpy reverb.
And it's like, but then did you use the other effects in it, like the 1201? Because it had like, that was a whole like selling point, wasn't it?
The phaser's good. a few of them kind of glitch. Like when you cycle through the variations, they glitch in a really pleasant way. It hasn't got MIDI, which is a bit annoying. Be good if it had MIDI. But yeah, I do like it a lot.
To like sequence it, you mean? Or
Yeah, just to build, because I'm so used to just building stuff in Ableton that's just got tons of LFOs going whatnot mental everywhere. But yeah, I do like that Zoom. I don't use it enough. Probably should use it more. I don't know if it's just the aesthetic of how it looks, but I do wonder whether you could whether Ableton Reverb, like everyone would laugh if you just used that, because it would, but it's probably, you can probably get something similar with that with Ableton Reverb.
the Ableton Reverb sounds really good, though. I think they've only made it better and better. But like
Got a good chorus effect, yeah.
There's a certain kind of like I've heard. Oh, I interviewed the guy from Valhalla DSP, who obviously makes wonderful reverbs, and his word that he uses, what I really loved, is cruft, to describe the sort of digital kind of kind of fuzz, cruft, which I thought was a nice word.
It's a great word. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that.
There's definitely a lot of cruft in your tunes.
There's a lot of cruft.
Some crufty bits.
Yeah, I do obsess about the cruft.
In a good way.
Yeah, because different machines bring different levels of cruft. Like there's a really good plugin, Megaverb Good Hertz, which I love. It's got a noise. The noise on it's really nice. It just modulates really nicely, and it seems to be linked to the decay time. It seems to interact really nicely, and you can. It's just got that sort of hissy hiss, but not overdone. But it's not. It's white noise, but it's lush with the filter doing stuff on the top end. It's just very crufty. But yeah, it's funny. I feel like you could get similar results with many different machines. It's funny recording cello and thinking of, because I haven't finished it yet, but I started just recording white noise on the cello. I built a massive long sample session out of just bowing on the bridge, with the intention of, because I've got this one white noise sort of like jam that I use on loads of different tracks, and I wanted to do a similar one on the cello, but I haven't got around to filtering it yet because there's a bit too much low end.
Do you mean that you've got like a sort of your own like Clark's sort of
like customized library? But there's something about asking for, I can't remember what they call it, like flautando, when you play the cello quite high up with a tiny bit of bow, you do get like a layer of, I mean, a classical person wouldn't think of it as white noise, but I just think of it as a sawtooth with white noise on it. It's a very similar sound, and they merge together, they play together quite nicely. Like sometimes classical sounds and synths sound really cheesy together, but as soon as I start thinking about it in terms of synthesis, I feel like I'm on secure ground kind of thing. And it's the same with the voice. When you sing, it's probably really bad for your voice, but like that sort of fluty, breathy tone is, you can kind of add layers of, there's just something about white noise that sounds comforting when it's mixed with a certain set of overtones. Maybe comforting is the wrong word, but it draws you in. It kind of draws you into the sound image.
I have a toddler, so we've been like for the last 2 years sleeping with white noise in the room, and it's like, it's hugely comforting. Like,
yeah.
I actually got like my SPL meter out and was like, is it too loud?
Right.
And I came to realize, I was like, no, the daft thing is, like, if we lived outside of houses, it's noisy all the time. Like, the world is noisy.
It is, yeah.
That's actually normal. And it's not normal to live in silence. So it's
silence,
which is probably same could be said of music. Is it? Obviously, music has to make noise. But what I mean is that, music can have texture and wind flowing through it.
Yeah, that's a nice way to see it. It's kind of unnatural to strip that all out. What's damaging? Is like 70. I read that 70 dB is not going to be good. Like if you have that for 3 hours a day, can do you?
I think that should be okay. It's like, it's 80. I knew this better at one point, but it's about 85 for 8 hours. Is like, that's the safe.
That's extreme,
because that's working. For sound workers, in the Kraftwerky sense, like 85 dB, you can hear it for 8 hours at a time, like constant, and you'll be okay. But any higher for any longer, then, and of course, it's like for every 10 dB, that's twice the perceived volume. So 95 is twice as loud as 85. And you must look after your ears. It's obviously like,
I do now. Yeah.
Now.
Now. Well, yeah, I've been forced to, but Yeah, like the tube is about 85, I think.
Oh, it can be
Quite
loud as well.
brutal.
Certain
Yeah.
parts of the
I love the
tube.
sound of the tube though. It's so
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's like a sort of Penderecki concert in you
yeah. It
for
is.
free.
There's parts of like
So
the
good.
central line that are really like, there's like a few
Yeah.
screechy moments. So I'm like, fuck, I'm like, probably this is bad, and it does it
Yeah.
every time as well, which is.
It's quite a weird thing to enjoy, isn't it? That
I think
that
I like.
No, I don't mean weird. I don't mean it makes you a weird person, but
Not
I
at
don't
all.
think like it's the sort of my mum just would not be able to relate to that at all. Like most people's just like getting off on just horrible, ugly noise. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean, beautiful noise. I think is you'd like to
well, it's
think.
when it's so dense and textured and there's so much going on. That's it for me. When it's like when there's just when you can't actually work it out. Because I'm quite used to hearing music that I can work out really quickly, and it bores me. And so when you can't, and it's natural, well, it's not natural, it's a train, but when there's like when it's so dense that
Yeah, that is kind of a rare treat.
it's like it's visceral, it's emotional.
Yeah. I was thinking of in Berlin the trains there. You must have heard this when I can't remember if it's when they stop or when they start. They make PWM. Have you heard that? Like meow. It's like I'm trying to do PWM with my mouth.
Yeah,
It's really hard.
I know exactly what you mean now.
The,
Have you got a recording of it?
No, I've just got the somewhere. I have that. There's that
You
like
can hear it.
Soma. Have you seen that Soma ether thing? Which is the
No.
I know what you're getting for Christmas, which is you've got to get a Soma ether. It's like this little box which has got like little antenna, and basically it's like you plug headphones into it, and it's like an intense sort of RF receiver, but it hears everything. Like it hears, like you put it up to your monitors and it makes tones. You put it up to your phone, like insanity.
I'm gonna write down
Soma.
what's it called again?
So Somas, as in Brave New World, Soma, and then I think it's Brave New World, isn't it? And then Ether.
Yeah, it is.
As in,
oh, cool.
Don't
Okay,
don't drink it or inhale it. But it's amazing. And like with that, I remember you go up to because when you go up to a dimmer, like light dimmer, and turn it, you can hear PWM. So it's like,
Right.
you can actually hear it because it's narrowing the amount of energy. And I know it's just funny when I heard the train, I was like, my God, it's a dimmer switch, but I'm actually hearing it because it's so loud. And there's just like an insane, obviously the world, that's what's amazing about this is it lets you hear a world that is otherwise unhearable. Car doors and remote locking, all these little noises that are around us, little like microwave things that are probably like frying our brains. I'm not a tinfoil
That's
hatter,
amazing.
but yeah.
Yeah, music's or sound, it's quite a subtle pleasure compared to what your visual cortex does. Although music's more sort of instantly distressing because it can be too loud, but it works wonder. Just alien sounds are underrated.
Searching for
It's
them.
good fun trying to find them.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just trying. I mean, I haven't made any actual music with these sounds, but I just love amping stuff up and just trying to like using really sort of futuristic sounds through an amp just gets this. You get this amazing cognitive dissonance because it's like it is alien. Like I know when I use this process, like I just know it won't happen again in the exact same way, and I know I've made some novel sounds. And that's satisfying, but it's also I don't know where to place them aesthetically. They're not retro, but they don't sound like cheesily future either. They're just odd. They sound quite alien's the only word I can think of now because it's late. But yeah.
Do you mean like reamping, like with a speaker and a mic, like taking stuff and putting it into the real world
just
again?
like building stuff on a desk and then like sweeping EQs and effects live, and it's probably like really useful for score work. But I've just got like hours of that. Like I can spend a day doing it and then I just forget about it. But it's just very absorbing.
That sounds like a really healthy process in the sense that you make time for doing experiments, like which I
it's like if you're like bored of melody.
Yeah,
I get so sick of melody sometimes. It just seems really like a pointless waste of time. But
there was I wrote this down. What was the tune? Oh, no, there you go. Obscene Harvest, which, because it was basically half texture, it was sort of like a textural tune. And then tiny hint of a ghost of like a Rhodes piano starts to appear, and then
Sorry, is this what track was it again? I
well,
didn't. You cut out on the
I wrote Obscene
Observe
Harvest.
Harvest.
Observe
Observe.
Harvest.
It's called. Yeah.
I might have called it Obscene
Observe.
Harvest, which is
Yeah. No,
does it disservice.
that's just it's just a load of clashing sine waves through a desk and then being really compressed through a DBX compressor. I can't remember exactly how I made it, but I remember it's really old. And I remember at the time I'd open up live shows with it. I wanted to open the album with it actually, but I think Steve Beckett from What went something like, "Well, what are you fucking doing? You can't have that in the shelves on HMV. That can't be the first track." And it's probably a good thing because Hair Bar is probably a better opening track. But
I get to the point. It's 2022. You're not allowed to be. You're not allowed to sort of take your time with things anymore. You have to give it to them in a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the kids will sack you off.
Yeah, I can't remember how I made it, to be honest. It was a bit of an ordeal, but a fun one.
But I guess I brought it up because of that aspect of texture and processing and stuff. And it feels like, does everything have to be textual in that sense? Or is it like, how are you doing this? Are you
No, not at all. No. I don't really sort of plan for it to happen like that. It's just naturally what I gravitate towards. I guess we're just talking texture. We're just sort of talking layers of saturation or things that are beyond the notation. It's in a way, it's timbre, isn't it? It's the thing that isn't the notation, I suppose. If you want to really boil it down, it's like the vertical of the music. Chords are just different melodies, aren't they? Like harmony is all just horizontal, but a snapshot of it. Whereas maybe timbre is the vertical aspect. I don't know if it is like that, but that helps. It helps me thinking of it like that. But it's not like I think about consciously working on the vertical timbre. It just
happens. You do both at the same time.
I can't really remember how I do a lot of stuff because it feels intuitive.
Yeah. But you obviously enjoy, like, things are not just DI'd straight into a thing. They go through things.
No, definitely not. Like, I love Grouper. Grouper's amazing. She's one of my favorite. It's like everyone loves Grouper. I don't know anyone that doesn't like Grouper, but I sort of don't want to know how she made it, though. I don't think. I'm not really a gearhead. Like, if there was a Grouper thing, if she was on Why We Bleep, I don't think I'd listen to it because I wouldn't want to know.
She might not tell me anything about like how she makes music, and that's fine too. I can't. There's one of her tunes that I've like caned loads, and I can't think what it's called now, and I feel really bad. But like, it's just beautiful.
Who do you want? Like, who do you really want on here to kind of? Because I can think of people I would want to know how they made. Like Current Value, I love his music, but it's a different. Like I would listen to an interview with him.
I would like to talk to Aphex, but I would not like to talk to him about gear. I would like to talk to him about how he stays focused enough to keep the whole image of the tune in mind when you're working at such a like microscopic level. Like it blows my mind because I just don't. It's to do with like how can you concentrate so well to weave such a coherent narrative, yet you're using hundreds of different elements from moment to moment. It's just like I just can't. It's just, and that's what intrigues me. Not how you do it, but how are you doing this? Like how are you actually, that layered?
Just copy and paste, a bit of variation.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's definitely some plugins that can demystify the intricate MIDI. I think it's I think it's sort of more difficult to make it emotionally compelling, I suppose, like in a way that doesn't feel manipulative. And I mean, I get that with scoring films. Like I'm working with a director at the moment, and they needed more emotional music, but and I played him what I did, and he was really into it, and said, "I'm so glad it doesn't sound manipulative," because I think a lot of film music does. You just know. I can only hear so many sort of minor chord progressions without wanting to just run away from everything. But it's kind of, to me, that's quite a subtle craft rather than the instant satisfaction of turning the sequencer up to 180 BPM, which I also love doing. Like I was listening to the old album that I re-released and was listening to like Urgent Jailhack. I probably wouldn't write a piece of music like that now, but I remember it's really absorbing at the time.
Regarding kind of composing for film and TV, I guess there's that aspect you're trying to please someone else, right? Or are you?
Yeah, it's kind of like going on a journey with someone, and it's good when it's not as simple as that. It's much nicer when it feels really collaborative, and you've got like a direct dialogue with the person who is really invested in the film. The main difficulty in it is definitely not the actual music making; it's dealing with feedback and sort of knowing how to navigate that. It's quite difficult at first, but I really enjoy it now, partly because it's an antidote to just sort of getting too familiar with what I'm up to as a solo artist. And I think they work really well together, but it's taken me a while to enjoy that.
To be critiqued and to be told not to do what you just
Yeah,
wanted to do.
I don't know. It's like you know what your own music is more if you're not permitted to write it for a while. It's like I remember like having cello lessons and then listening to The Bells by Jeff Mills, and like I heard what it was really like. It was like hearing it for the first time because I'd been in this other world. And for me, it's like that contrast it's just like hunger to hear all forms of music and how they interact and contrast. But I know you can easily construct an argument that that's wrong and that it's about just doing one thing and being completely obsessive about that and understanding that. You can easily say that my way is wrong, but for me, it works to have contrast. And similarly with scoring, just having to deal with what someone else wants, but still managing to do something you like and that you think is you, you know. That's the challenge.
I mean, creativity is just like combining different things. I suppose if you've got the breadth if you're listening to all kinds of different things, you listen to two things in close succession, it's definitely going to change. You're going to combine and conflate the two in a way that is creative inherently.
I hope combine and not
Not rip off,
conflate. Yeah.
but like in that way that you know, as an exercise, you can try and write music like other people and fail, and then it's a good thing. It's like
True. Yeah,
it is a good
definitely.
thing.
Yeah.
Like you should only fail, really. I mean, depending on what the music is.
Yeah. Just kind of carry on ripping someone off until you just completely sound like yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you would do if you go to music college, I guess. Learn how to compose in a certain style. But yeah, scoring's good. It's definitely enjoyable. It's just like saying sort of no to quite a lot of stuff as well. But
Do you mean to ideas or to?
well, just only saying yes to things you really want to do.
How did you get in? I don't understand how you went into this, and like, because not everyone does. You know, you sort of and doing pieces for live, you know, for dance and things like that.
My wife's a choreographer, so she gets me. She gets me for good rates.
Just gets good rates. Fair enough.
It kind of started through her, to be honest. Because the inevitable leap from that is to go to score film, I guess. I think I just passed. I think Steve Beckett from Warp just sent some of my music to the director for The Last Panthers, and it happened like that. There's too much TV, though, I think.
Well, everything's TV now. It's like, but isn't TV just film? Or is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you tried composing for a show or?
No, never. Like,
not interested.
Yeah, it's like I find that the idea of it fascinating. I bet it would be scary, and I know what you're saying about being told like, "Nah, don't like it," or "No, I don't like it," but just as in that's not really what I was looking for. You know, and you're like, "Oh God," like I don't know, but I can certainly see why it would be. Like, as you say, it's just like something that will refresh you and then you can return to your own music.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, I sort of know what I want to scratch now. Like,
yeah, it is like that. If you've got a director there was something where they were really into Bernard Herrmann, and it was this film, Daniel Isn't Real, and I sort of managed to extract what I want. And I probably just wouldn't think of doing that on my own. But if you've got someone there saying, like, listen to this, we want something a bit like this. And if you can sort of in your head go, well, you're not going to get that. I'm going to do my own thing with it, but do the sort of social dance of going, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I really like that. That's the difficult bit, like, because part of me is just going like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this, but you have to play nice, opposed to a certain point. And it makes it better if you're invested in.
I think good prompts like that, though. Like,
yeah, exactly.
A really good prompt is great. It's like, it's just when people like make it more pink, you know, I suppose. But maybe that's a good prompt too. It's that sort of classic joke. But like, I mean, Bernard Herrmann is a wonderful composer, and so it's like, well,
yeah,
that's a glorious thing to shoot for. So fair enough. But
yeah, and just like that, it makes you think about like having characters in stories is so, it's changed what I find interesting about music, in that like I just get so into characters in films more than the actual plots of I feel like plots just expose characters, and characters usually just have one or two things about them, good characters, that come into conflict through the plot. So the plot is, so really when you can get inside of another human's head that's just an amazing actor, I just find myself scoring way more, just like feeling my way through the character's personality and flaws. And I just get so into it, I find. And it really sparks loads of thematic ideas. And that's the side of it. Like putting it to picture is one thing. That's like the technicality, nitty gritty. That's all fine. But just finding a way to climb inside of another human's head that's got this amazing plot they're involved in is really, I love it.
Turning that into music is like that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's like, feels like something that an AI should not be able to do. Give it time.
Give it time.
Yeah.
Famous last words.
I know. That's interesting. Do you watch like the dailies or whatever, and kind of, to what extent, how does that work in reality?
What's that?
As into like, if you're composing something for a TV show or a film, do you watch it, basically get to know the characters, and how do you actually do it?
I'll sort of watch it once and then read the script, and then there'll just be a certain scene that I'll have a loose idea for, and it will gradually funnel down and become more kind of concentrated and specific. The most fun part is the start of the project, where the director's like really into one theme that you've done. I mean, that's why it gets so different to solo albums, where you've got these definitive versions of tracks. I guess maybe it's similar to live versions in that you have to be able to think in multiple domains of what the piece could be and what the key is. And that's why it's a technical challenge in a way that an album isn't. Like, you have to know how to modulate and revoice stuff and just sort of build a mountain out of one tiny seed of an idea. And composition film, when it's good, is that. It's like, it really tests you. And sometimes that, it can make a solo album writing process feel a bit indulgent and feel a bit like, which is great as well. But that's what I mean. It's like having the discipline of a film where you're responsible when it's not really your work, sort of breeds this appetite just to go like, I just want to do a solo album now, and then get it out of the way. Splurge.
But then do you bring that same level of discipline to your like solo album, or do you just sort of go,
Well, sometimes not. Sometimes you enjoy like not doing it.
Fair enough. You've earned that. Like, it's your right. Like with the is it 0510, 510, the like
0510, yeah.
Is that like a date? Or what?
Yeah.
It is a date. Well, the thing I'm curious about with that is, if it is a compendium of old tracks, it's like, how have you done that? Because the process of working through hundreds of tracks, like especially over God knows how many years, is like, it's not, anyone who makes music would know that doing that kind of retrospective compilation is really hard. Like picking the tracks and the sequence for the tracks, at least speaking personally, but I know other people struggle with it. It's like, how do you do it? I
think 4 or 5 of them were already out on an EP I did. And then they were just ones that I'd sort of listened to a lot. The other ones that I liked and thought held up, and went together. Generally just stuff that I listen to a lot are the ones that get released.
Do you have like a process for you stick them on a cloud or something, and so you can kind of refer to your own archive?
Dropbox.
You're organised
in Dropbox, sort of like, yeah, pretty, yeah.
Like, and then
just in different situations, like posh studio monitors, posh headphones, in-ear headphones, going for a walk, in the other room, like in the shower, on my phone, on laptop speakers while I'm cooking. Just as if they passed all of those tests and they sound good on all of those setups, then that's you generally, yeah. I was thinking about the phone speaker the other day, like how they're like little gramophones. There's something terrible about listening to music on a phone, but there's something amazing about it as well. Like, you've just got the whole world of music in your pocket. You can just have it with you all the time.
At the back of the bus.
And it's
Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, people like gramophones. I'm going to treat my phone like a gramophone.
I mean, it probably sounds better than an old Deutsche gramophone, like like 30s one. I went to like a regional fair in North Yorkshire, and there was a man who had like an old school.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
nice.
no, he had. It wasn't even vinyl. It was tubes. It was literally wax cylinders.
Yeah,
and it was like, they're amazing. I can't. Yeah, he was an intense bloke. But it's funny you say that, because earlier tonight I was having a bath with my son, and my son's a tiny toddler, just to be clear. And I had Body Riddle on in we played it on my phone.
Oh,
there you
nice.
go. So there you go. It's true. People are doing,
Nice.
even today, people are listening through the rich, like,
Put it
against the wall to like amplify it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the old trick.
Yeah, or put it in a cup.
Yeah, it's quite good. Both speakers, like covering them in foil. That's a good one.
Is it?
And then
make a kind of
they resonate. And then I've done that a few times, just on album outros.
And so they like
do live Doppler. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Live Doppler.
I do like shoving my phone in my mouth to make a talk box as well, which works surprisingly well.
I haven't tried that.
If you find the speaker, you can like jam it in your mouth and fully talk box it. I have got a real talk box, which I barely used, if I'm honest, which is kind of a shame because it is an amazing concept.
Yeah, I've never used one.
Shoving a sound in your mouth and see what happens. There are a couple of other things I wanted to ask, like it's interesting, this sort of approach to like track size as well. There's a particularly kind of Clark phenomenon, which is the sort of 1 minute track and the really short vignettes. And obviously it's a really old tune, but I just wanted to shout out Oaklands, which is from Clarence Park. It's like a really good example of that, where you've got just one idea, like a really beautiful, and that's like what sounds like a reverb piano that's then been reversed, and it's just like a gorgeous loop. And it's not really a question other than just to sort of observe your approach to like not being afraid to do really short tracks.
Sometimes it's just really obvious when something shouldn't be continued and just should stop. I suppose that's all there is to it. I'm not like 100% right, but I'm nowhere near 100% right. But like, generally I think there's like this ratio of 80-20 where like I've got an intuition that something shouldn't be more than what it is. And like, all of those haiku tracks, no part of me is going, oh, well, this could have been longer, couldn't it? You've left that a bit short. It's like, no, that's not the case. There's some things you just shouldn't overdo, and haiku tracks are a bit like that, I suppose.
Haiku tracks, is that
I suppose that's what I call them, yeah. Because they're just succinct little palate cleansers.
Yeah, they are.
But they're quite often my favourite tracks, not just of mine, but of other people as well. Short little ditties. Because they always connect to other things on the album, so it's like my last album on the DG album, there was quite a few tracks that it's all just one track, basically. I listened to the album as one track for so long that the PQ mark is just an annoyance at the end. The haiku is the sort of outro of something in some way. Yeah, but I never intend to write short tracks. It just happens. It just sounds so haphazard. As everything I'm saying is like, I don't intend to do anything. Everything's an accident, which sort of feels like it is.
Well, that may well be true, but obviously it's your judgment that is what sort of
it's all intuition.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you are judging what is kept, therefore, and what we hear.
Yeah,
therefore, it's not accidental anymore.
A minute's like a long time. A minute's still quite a lot can happen in a minute.
I was researching airline accidents, and a lot of them happen within about a minute. Like, everything goes pear-shaped and it ends very badly for everyone. But like, it is insane. You are right. The amount of time is not long, but it probably feels like a lifetime to those people. But I think it's that having the sort of wherewithal to know not to frig with it.
Yeah, I suppose so. It goes against what I was talking about earlier with the recording layers and layers of synths, and you end up just using the first one. Don't know where my intuition was there. I think my intuition was saying it will just be fun to do this in a perverse way, just to see what the melody sounds like in so many different contexts. Sometimes you just get swept along by that process.
Another Clark thing that I always like is your approach to naming tracks is quite sort of like almost like whimsy and wordplay to that. I don't know if
whimsy wordplay.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it makes me sound like I'm denigrating it.
Really.
But like, no. They're alliterative and they're sort of playful.
You're not at all. Yeah, I don't know. That it feels difficult, but then as soon as you finish an album and the tracks are out there, I don't really care. I suppose I don't really care that much about them.
How do you name them?
How do I name them? I don't know. It's just something I can't explain it. I really can't explain it. It's just like, why do I like tea and not coffee? I don't know.
I know what you mean.
I like coffee though.
No, I like
but just not as much as tea.
You prefer tea?
tea is a better drink.
I
prefer tea, yeah.
doff my cap that I'm not wearing to you, because that I've seen polls where it's like, in fact, I put a poll on Twitter of like tea versus coffee. Everyone was like coffee. I'm like, nope, you're wrong. It's tea.
No, it's so wrong.
Yeah, tea is
Come on,
the best one.
don't stop pretending. People just pretending that coffee is better.
Tea. I mean,
just to annoy me.
I wanted to also ask you about finishing music as a process, which is like, I know that's a bit daft because you're like a signed artist, so you have a job to release music, but it's still, I think, noteworthy. There are other people, even on the label that you're on, that don't release a great deal of stuff, whereas you've like consistently put music out every year.
It's a really good question, because it's a bit of a mystery, and it does come down to taste. I can say that, but on the other hand, I can also know that there's this like categorical feeling you get when something's done, that you just don't want to touch it, and that anything you're doing is not, it just becomes this diminishing returns thing. And then you realize that there's like a perfect imperfection to something. And that's like this thing that I was talking about earlier, where it's a moment captured, and more time on it isn't going to make it better. And it might make some aspects better. It's like all of these things are intuitive judgments. But now when I try and analyze it now, which I'd never actually have done, that it's maybe this ratio of like, you know what you could work on and improve, but you know that you'd lose something by doing that, and it wouldn't necessarily be something tangible. I don't think your audience hear music like producers and audiences are two different species of human. Like I was playing something to my manager that he's a real music lover, but it was something that I hadn't really finessed. And he just said, oh, it just sounds like this bit's got more energy. And he was really into it, but I was just like screwing about the EQ. And it's just important to remember that sometimes though, people that aren't music makers have the best feedback on what you're doing. And we'll often choose the more vibey mix. There's this Hudson Mohawk track I love called Scud Books, and I heard the demo of it, and I heard the album version. Like the demo was clearly a demo, and then the album one was like more produced, but it's like, oh, it's more produced. I still loved the demo because it just was such a great idea, really well done, and had just such an energy to it. And I judge myself way more harshly, and I don't know why. Like I would probably do what he did and do like a really produced album version. And I'm just quite aware that you can just go down so many rabbit holes, and it doesn't always serve the music well, I don't think. So I'm not saying just rush it out, but I'm just saying the caution that you can take in just overdoing things can just kill music. It can just kill the energy. Definitely can, especially nowadays. You can always mix something more. There's like Fab Filter plugin where you can just have like a node of EQ and automation of like 0.1 dB, and like, and there's just plugins like Soothe where you can just endlessly smooth out every notch, every interesting slight resonance that is a bit jarring, get it better for Spotify so it doesn't disturb anyone in like Cafe de Niro, like whatever that cafe is called.
Cafe
like
Nero.
Costa
Oh,
coffee.
God.
Cafe de Niro.
Cafe with Bernard
like
Herrmann strings in the background. Yeah.
With Bernard Herrmann strings, yeah. You can notch all the interest out of your music with too much time.
But also what I'm struck is the fact that you're super experimental, but you're also like not allowing yourself to just like get lost in fields of like field recordings and stuff. You are like, no, like at the end of the day, a tune has to be written, and a tune is written from start to finish. And that's sort of, I don't know how you do that. Like, other than, you've got an obligation contractually to release some music by X date.
It's not that. It's more just, I don't know. It's probably just confidence and a take on things. I don't know. I don't even know if it's confidence. It's just having a take on something is the most important thing in music, I think.
Do you mean so you can say to yourself, it's done? Or?
Like the sense of decisions being made. I like feeling decisions. I don't like it in music where like the melody could be that. It's like, well, it could be that, but it could also, I don't like sort of wasted notes and like that feeling of like, did they really mean to put that note there? And I get annoyed because it's not personal. It's not like I'm berating the person that made it, but I'm berating what my ears are hearing. I just have very strong opinion, and like in my own stuff as well. I'm just pretty ruthless in terms of just getting rid of things that aren't up to scratch. But that's all subjective, It's weird though, because I like jazz, and jazz has got, that's just like all the wrong notes all the time.
But you
But I
don't
quite
listen to
like it.
jazz all the time, I suppose, is the point.
No, you don't.
Fair enough. Otherwise, that would be too much. Not to denigrate jazz. Final question is, we haven't really talked about gear, and this doesn't really need to be answered in a geary way, but it is
Geary.
it's kind
I
of
like
a
that.
geary
Are
thing.
you geary?
Geary. Hey, I'm geary. What is the future of music technology? What would you like it to be?
I'd like it just to, I'm really basic. Like if I had DSP from 2002, I'd be happy if latency was cracked. If you could just have all your plugins, everything going on, bananas, fireworks, but just no latency, that would be good. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. I don't know enough about the tech, but that would be fun. I'm not that into surround sound. I'm not that into surround sound. I mean, I like stereo, but I don't get that excited about, that happened behind me. That's not going to make me like a track.
Correct. Yes, that is absolutely right. Although with that said, actually, there was a specific thing on one of your tunes, which was a stereo thing, which were the kicks on Body Riddle. You've got kicks that are really wide, and then the rest of suddenly the beat is like relative. Maybe it's just my ears, but I was like, wow, the kick is like spread, and then the rest of it is not. And you've got these massive sounding things, which is, I mean, so you were using space in a good way.
It was written on a really quite a bad old PC, but I did go through a phase of crazy stereo stuff. I do like it on headphones, but it can be a bit distracting at the same time. The future, what I like doing a lot is playing instruments through a separate laptop with loads of DSP on it. So you just use like the laptop as a pedal board. That's fun. And that would be really good with no latency. You could just absorb yourself in this mad world of augmented reality, especially just walking around the house with headphones on. Like everything you're hearing's got like 7 modulating pitch shifters and 8 different reverbs. That's quite good fun. That feels really indulgent. I could do that all day.
You could almost do that. Like do you remember there was an app? There was like RJDJ was the app, and it was like,
oh no, I don't know.
You put on like your iPhone things with the like cord and the mic, and it remixed the real world. It added like delay and pitch shifters and stuff. It was like really trippy.
They beat me to it.
But I don't know if it exists anymore. RJDJ. It was definitely, or is that the artist? No, it was a thing. Reality jockey.
It's a bit annoying when presets always have loads of delay and reverb on them.
But I think they do that to sell you on.
That's something that if the future of music could not be that would be good.
Because you want to put your own endless amounts of delay and reverb on those things.
Yeah,
fair enough. So latency is the problem. I mean, that feels very solvable, which is like get one of those new posh Macs. They're really good.
I haven't. No,
I've
got quite an old Mac.
Strongly recommend the M1 ones. The M1 ones are bonkers. Like you can chain plugins. I do not work for Apple, but like it's ridiculous that you can just go
right.
Like I had every single Arturia plugin that they make running at the same time in a session, just to like making sound, just to see if it would break. And it was like 43% DSP, which is
nice, with
like 33 plugins like making sound at once. I was like, it's really good. So that may be solvable. Like, and then you can just walk around with your MacBook and just remix the world with headphones.
Yeah,
sounds quite good.
Or I could just play the piano for a bit.
That also sounds
forget about my computer for a while. Don't know. It'll be one of the two, probably both at some point.
That also sounds good.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it would be satisfying to have no latency. Does audio it feels like it's hit the limit of what? Like, surely new computers are just built around really posh visual processing because that takes up so much more CPU. Feels like audio's kind of hit a limit, and there's probably not that as much interest in it as there is in virtual reality coding. And
do you mean in terms of the DSP itself?
That's a new frontier. Yeah, like that's the new frontier of technology. Sound feels a bit done to me.
Well, I do.
I know I don't mean that in a bleak way, but I mean like novel sounds are it's quite niche. It's quite a sort of niche thing, whereas everyone's on their phone looking at content. And so all of the sort of drive in technology is towards mad CGI.
Yeah. The visual, I think.
Not that that's better. I don't think it is better. I'm saying it sort of quite neutrally, but
Those Macs that I'm talking about, like what their CPUs are running on are posh because of mobile phones.
Bitcoin
That's what they are. It's just actually like Bitcoin miners.
Yeah.
But then they're so fast because they are literally taking super efficient processors that were developed for mobiles and then having a lot of them in a small space. And you can make something that consumes very little power and is actually like 10 times faster than the best existing Intel processor. And so it is bonkers. Like the DSP on the Mac M1s is bananas, but as to software, I guess the sky's the limit. I suppose if you've got tools like Max MSP and stuff, and if you've got computers with limitless or not limitless processing, but 10 times what they were, then you really can cook up insanity. And there are plugin companies that are just making all kinds of weirdness, as well as the whole AI thing, which is not at a point where it should worry everyone, but there's definitely going to be a point where you can say, I want music in the style of Clark. It will probably have been trained on your music, which is frightening.
Yeah, definitely. That's not that far away.
And is also a bit of a legal quagmire because they are not going to be paying you, even though it's your music that they listen to and train the algorithm on. So that's coming.
Yeah, or just Spotify, but with AI sort of customizing a medley of different artists. Dizzy Rascal rapping over this Chopin waltz with Lars Ulrich doing the beat or something.
I mean, I would listen to that. I can't say I wouldn't not listen to that, but but none of them are getting paid is the point. Well, thank you for your time in sharing your thoughts with me.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chris. As I said before, I just was struck by his frankness and openness. Like, it's just a very useful trait when it comes to conducting an interview with a person. And you wouldn't expect for someone so goddamn legitimate to necessarily want to share everything about their process. And obviously, as you hear, there's a lot that feels like it can't even be articulated. I'm sure there's a lot that Chris himself just can't quite put his fingers on in terms of how he does it. And there are lots of times where he's like, I don't know how I do it. It's just kind of what happens. He's responding to his inner voice in some way or his inner urge. And gorgeous, beautiful musical things come from those inner urges. And so I thank you, Chris, for putting your urges in the recorded form. Yes, you should dang well go and listen to Clark if you haven't already. If you really haven't, you really are in for a treat. There are lots and lots of albums because Chris is prolific and, like some of the Warp artists, has been putting out albums very regularly. So we are blessed with lots and lots of music to listen to. And obviously there's this recent thing with Tom York executive producing Sus Dog, which just also sounds absolutely stunning. But yeah, loads of music. Go and listen to it. It's absolutely brilliant. You can thank me later. I've been pondering this. I mean, I loved that Chris, on a couple of measures, echoed other things that people have said on this podcast. Basically echoing Caitlin Aurelia Smith, where she had said that she basically does musical exercises without the fear of whether they're good or bad. You just sing, or you get, Chris was saying, you go at the piano and you just sing and play and it will sound like shit. And that's fine because you're kind of opening up, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're opening up your kind of creativity, your chakras, for want of a better term, to just allow music to come forth. And I suppose in a kind of, you just put it out there almost like you're using some kind of generative sequencer, and then reflect on the recording and just see if there was anything in there that you actually liked. But as he says, he's like, you can do that for days and days and it sounds like absolute crap. But then there's just a spark. After enough time or of something has clicked internally or your judgment has changed, then suddenly you discover that you've entered a new room. You've walked into a new room and you're like, oh God, I've actually come up with something that I just would not have considered before. I've pushed myself beyond my safe zone. And I think that's really interesting because obviously, if we think about it laterally, like how are you going to invent new music if we're not straying into weird territory? Like it has to sound weird and shit for it to be new. I read this somewhere that apparently all truly new sounds sound like white noise to people. When you hear people listening to music that's new and modern and they're just like, it just sounds like noise, doesn't it? Because apparently it really does. Like it really does just sound like noise because your brain doesn't even comprehend the structure and how it's supposed to be arranged and can't parse it, basically. So it just sounds like double Dutch. But, you listen to something over and over and you get the hang of it. That seems to be like quite a good process for coming up with completely weird original music, or at least taking yourself out of your comfort zones. It's gonna sound shit. And it also echoes something that I've thought for ages, which is just like, well, it's a John Cage quote, in fact, which is that you've got to separate your judgment from like the doing. That is to say, you should make music and judge music as two separate activities. Make it, and just get it made and you can judge it later. But don't judge while you make it because that will stop you. It arrests your openness and ability to like go down a path that might initially not sound very good, as we all don't sound necessarily very good when we first start making music, but we get the hang of it. So yeah, lots to ponder and lots of music to listen to. Chris Clark is a G. And I can confess, I have recently purchased on eBay a Zoom 1201. Because really, I've always I got into music making when the 1201 was like current. That was like the hot affordable thing. I never had one. I had like an RFX 1000. Never had one. I'm pretty sure I never had one. And so I bought one. So let's see if it's any good. It was 35 quid. Like, how can it be bad for that? Anyway, Chris Clark, thank you for your frankness and your insight. I also want to thank Matt Milligan, who edited this podcast. Thank you, Matt. Hired Matt to do the editing that helped me out a great deal. Thanks to Signal Sounds and thonk.co.uk for sponsoring. Computer World 2 would be the code at Thonk before the end of November. And finally, thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please do consider sponsoring on Patreon. Patreon.com/Mylar Melodies. Would be hugely appreciated. Help me literally keep the lights on and produce more podcasts. So yeah, and if you can't afford to get on the Patreon thing, that is no bother. But please consider sharing this episode, telling your friends about the podcast. That can be free and also helps enormously. So that's all for this month. It's been a beautiful one, and I want to thank you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.